He had skyscrapers, airlines, the world's attention, and a heart made of glass. I was just a waitress who spilled champagne on his suit. One mistake made me the headline. One smile made me his obsession. And one kiss cost him his empire. Comment the city you're reading from, and don't forget to rate the story. Damien Blackwell didn't walk into a room. He conquered it. Every gala, every boardroom, every camera flash, he ruled them all. The billionaire with the world at his feet. And me? I was balancing a tray of champagne, praying the glasses didn't rattle loud enough to reveal my shaking hands. Rent was due. Emma's therapy bill had doubled. My shoes pinched. I just needed to get through the night. But fate doesn't like small plans. One guest stumbled. My tray tilted. Crystal toppled, straight onto Damien Blackwell's $12,000 Armani suit. Gasps cut the air. Conversations froze. The richest man in Manhattan now dripped gold liquid like the universe had played a joke. I'm so sorry, I stammered, reaching for a napkin. His hand caught mine. Warm. Firm. Unshakable. His gray eyes locked on me, not cold as the tabloids promised, but curious. You ruined my suit, he said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. My stomach dropped. I'll pay for the cleaning. He leaned closer, voice low enough to be dangerous. Or you could tell me your name. Lila, I whispered. Lila, he repeated, tasting it like a secret. The world may be at my feet, but I think you just made me fall. Cameras flashed. Headlines were born. And that was the night the man who owned everything decided he wanted the one thing he could never buy. By sunrise the city had learned my first name and mispronounced my last. Who is Lila? Waitress derails Blackwell at Climate Gala. From Queens to Kingmaker? They screenshotted my face mid-apology and looped it like a joke with bad timing. I rode the subway to work with my cap low and my phone off, pretending no one noticed. They noticed. A kid whispered, "That's her," like I'd stolen the moon. At the hotel, the manager waited with a corporate smile that had never reached a pair of eyes. Lila, sweetheart. Pierre says you should take a breather. Paid. I asked. We'll circle back. I didn't cry. I clocked out, stepped into the glittering cold, and walked until the noise turned to wind. When I finally checked my phone, there were 37 missed calls, 4 voicemails from unknown, and 1 text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Damien Blackwell. Dinner. Tonight. My driver will be outside at 7. D. I stared until the letters steadied. Then I typed what any sane person would. Oh. The dots appeared. You spilled on me. Let me make it up to you. 7 p.m. I don't date men whose suits cost more than my rent. A beat. Then I'll wear a cheaper suit. Against better judgment and because rent still hadn't paid itself, I typed. Fine. 1 hour. Public place. Agreed. A pin dropped. A small restaurant tucked under the High Line. Not one of his temples of glass. A place where the chairs wobbled and the pasta forgave. At 7, a black car idled at my curb like an apology with leather seats. I told the driver I wasn't getting in. He nodded and held out an umbrella. We walked. Damien was already at the corner table, tie loosened, sleeves rolled once. He stood when he saw me like the room belonged to me first and him second. Lila, he said, my name careful in his mouth. I have 1 hour, I said. 1 hour, he agreed and ordered food I could pronounce. He didn't flirt. He asked questions. About Emma. About the double shift that paid for her therapist who insisted laughter counted as progress. About the apartment above the bodega where the heat clanked like a ghost in the pipes. He listened like listening was rarer than money. When the plates were cleared, he pushed a small envelope across the table. If you never want to see me again, he said, text this number. My assistant will make the headlines shut up. I didn't touch the envelope. Can you do that? He smiled without humor. No. But I can make them chase something else. Is that how you live? I asked. Chasing and being chased? That's how you win, he said. Then softer, almost to himself, that's how you forget what losing feels like. My hour ended. He let it. Outside, under the L, he reached for my hand and didn't take it. I know what this looks like, he said. I know what they'll say. I can't change them. I can only ask you for another hour. I wanted to say no. I said, we'll see. His smile was quick, surprised. I'll take it. When I got home, Emma had already found the photos. She held my cheeks like I was 5 and had brought home a drawing. You look terrified, she said. I am, I said. Good, she replied. It means it matters. They changed the lock on my locker. They changed the tone of the emails. They did not change the way rent came due. On the third day of my leave, the elevator in my building opened and a woman in white stepped out as if she owned gravity. "Ms. Hale," she said, not waiting for confirmation. "I'm Cassandra Blackwell." Damien's sister looked like a verdict. Diamond studs like ice, hair pulled back into a bun that had never known a stray. She brought a smell of expensive paper and winter. "Can I help you?" I asked, already bracing. "You can help yourself," she said, glancing around my hallway with mild anthropological interest. "By ending whatever this is with my brother." "It's not." She held up a hand. "Please don't waste my time. Damien thinks he's in love. He confuses gratitude with destiny. You confuse attention with safety." I laughed then because if I didn't, I'd say something that would cost me another month of rent. "What do you want, Ms. Blackwell?" She drew a slim folder from her bag and placed it on the radiator like a sacrament no one in this building had ever received. "An NDA. 7 figures. You disappear. The story dies." My skin went cold. "No. You haven't even looked," she said, puzzled the way one is when a dog doesn't fetch. "I don't sell my voice," I said. "I've paid too much to keep it." She studied me as if recalculating an equation. "You think this is about you?" she asked softly. "We steward a company that employs 80,000 people. Pension funds, flight routes, hospitals named after donors who like the way his signature looks on a wing. It is not about your heart. And if you make it about your heart, those 80,000 pay for your sentiment." "And if I sign?" I asked. "Do they get sunlight and I get silence?" "They get stability," she said. "You get peace." "Peace isn't hush," I said, and surprised us both. Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "You're charming. It will wear off." She slid a business card across the folder. "You have 48 hours. After that, I stop offering peace." She left the way she arrived, without asking the building for permission. I carried the folder to my kitchen like it was radioactive and stared until the letters blurred. Then I took a pen and wrote "NO" across the first page in capital letters, like a child learning defiance. It felt spectacular and stupid. It felt like mine. At midnight my phone buzzed. "Unknown, did she come?" I didn't ask how he knew. She did. "Unknown, Damien, I'm sorry. Me don't be." She offered me peace. I chose noise. Pause. "Then we'll learn to dance to it. You can't step into a myth and stay who you were. The city doesn't allow it." A week after the spill, I wasn't a waitress anymore. I was the girl in every newsroom's rundown. Talk shows dissected my laugh, my posture, the shape of my mouth around the syllable sorry. Strangers demed me marriage proposals and death threats with equal spelling. Damien went to war with quiet. He refused interviews, canceled a merger, and donated a hospital wing on a Friday at 5 p.m. so the cameras would miss it. The street punished him anyway. The stock dipped. A sovereign fund placed a hold. Cassandra's boardroom filled with men who preferred certainty to romance. The second dinner he invited me to wasn't dinner. It was a sub-basement server room under a building with his name on it, colder than December and louder than an angry ocean. "This is where the world decides what to think about you," he said, tugging on a sweatshirt like a man pretending not to own a dozen suits upstairs. "I wanted you to see it." Rows of humming machines. A wall of screens spewing charts that looked like EKGs of a god. A kid with blue hair and a nose ring waved. "Hi," she said. "I'm Kushi. Don't mind the apocalypse." "The trend lines," Damien explained, track mentions. Tone. Velocity. Money loves velocity. He pointed at a red spike. "That's Cassandra's leak to a friend, at a business journal. That green search is a video of you handing a lollipop to a kid outside the hotel." I stared. "You're telling me a lollipop saved $2 million? 3, he said. "You're very good at this." "I'm good at keeping kids from crying," I said. "It's cheaper than suing a journalist." Kushi laughed. "Can we keep her?" "No," I said automatically. "I'm not a pet." Damien's smile reached his eyes. "She's not." We ate pizza out of the box on overturned milk crates, the richest man I'd ever meet blotting grease with a napkin and telling me about the first company he bought, a freight firm held together by duct tape and pride. "I thought I was saving it," he said. "Maybe I was saving myself." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm trying not to confuse rescue with control," he said, and it sounded so honest I wanted to step closer just to be where that sentence had been born. When we surfaced, the city had tipped toward midnight. He walked me to my door and didn't ask to come in. "Can I call you tomorrow?" he asked like a teenager on a stoop. "Yes," I said like a girl who'd stopped pretending this was anything but what it was becoming. Saying yes to a man like Damien is a declaration of war against 100 tiny conveniences. Your phone stops being your friend. Your landlord discovers policy. Your boss discovers liability. Your mother's old friends from church discover a moral compass they'd never used on anyone wealthier than them. The eviction notice slid under my door on a Wednesday. Renovations, the letter lied. I packed anyway because fighting a management company was a hobby for people with time. Damien offered his spare apartment like he was offering an umbrella. No, I said. I don't want to live in a story you paid for. We'll find you a place I don't own, he replied. I can still pay the broker. We'll split it, I countered. You can't afford. I can afford half of whatever costs less than dignity, I said. We found a walk-up above a bakery that smelled like heaven if heaven ran on yeast and minimum wage. The super didn't Google me. He asked for first and last and a letter from an employer. I showed him my bank app and 3 references. He nodded. The radiator clanks. Don't call me about it. The cat in 3B is everyone's now. I moved in on a Sunday with 2 suitcases, one plant Emma had named Persephone, and the feeling that I'd chosen a life with edges. Damien carried the heavier bag without grunting. He assembled a bookshelf with instructions in Swedish and Triumph in English. When we were done, we sat on the floor with takeout from the place under the train and watched a movie we didn't finish. He didn't touch me until I did the touching, my palm resting against his jaw like a declaration he was allowed to hear. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Not like this. Me neither, I said. We'll learn. He kissed me like gratitude. I kissed him like a promise. Cassandra didn't go away. People like her never do, they become weather. The lawsuit arrived with embossed letterhead and a courier who apologized for existing. Blackwell Holdings versus Damien Blackwell and Lila Hale. Defamation. Tortious interference. Intentional infliction of nonsense. The damages column had more zeros than my lifetime of tips. Damien's lawyer, a woman named Nyla who wore kindness like steel, slid the papers back into the envelope. They're trying to bury you in process, she said. We won't let them. What do they want? I asked. Nyla ticked items off on her fingers. Silence. Spectacle. Submission. Preferably all 3. I signed an affidavit that said, in effect, I met a man. I spilled a drink. I did not sell my soul. Damien signed a different kind of paper, the kind that loosens a grip. He delegated votes to the board, recused himself from contracts, sold a townhouse he never slept in. It was like watching a king take off jewelry until there was only a man, and then asking if the man wanted to stay. At night, we lay under a window that rattled in the wind and counted the kinds of quiet. There was the old quiet, fear wearing a pillow over its face. And there was this, room to breathe, a body you chose choosing you back, a text from Emma that said I got the job at the bookstore. Followed by come celebrate with cheap cake. We bought the expensive cake instead and brought 3 forks. On the morning the board scheduled a vote of no confidence, Damien looked at me across my tilted kitchen table and said, if they take it, they take it. But they don't take you. They never had me, I said. He exhaled like a man putting down a weight he trained to hold. Good. Outside, the city ran drills for apocalypse and brunch. Inside, we wrote our own terms and hoped our hands could carry the ink. The boardroom sat too high to hear the street. Cassandra presided like tradition with teeth. The director said his name with a careful past tense. Mr. Blackwell, one began, your leadership has created volatility. My leadership has created profit, Damien replied. Your fear has created volatility. Cassandra tapped the gavel as if bored by heaven and earth exchanging letters. All in favor. The chorus of men who mistook safety for virtue. Nyla filmed the count for the record. I watched through glass, a ghost with a beating heart. When the gavel fell, Damien didn't flinch. He turned to the wall of windows and looked at a city that once tried to fit in his pocket. Effective immediately, Cassandra pronounced, you are removed. Your access is revoked. Security will. You don't need to escort me, he said mildly. I know the way out. He stepped into the hall, found me, and, in front of a camera that would later sell our photo to 1,000 sites, reached for my hand. Want to get noodles? He asked. You just got fired, I said. And I'm starving, he answered. We ate in a storefront with flickering neon and a cat that patrolled like a manager. He told me about the first time he saw his name on a building and decided it wasn't large enough. I told him about the first time I saw my name in a byline on the school paper and decided it was, until the world convinced me it wasn't. We slurped noodles and built a country between us that didn't appear on any map Cassandra owned. When we walked home, rain started the way apologies sometimes do, too late and too much. He shrugged off his jacket and held it over my head. "We need one umbrella," he said. "We have two hands," I said and laced my fingers with his. Above us, a billboard flashed his face next to a question mark. Below, a woman nodded as we passed and said, "Love looks good on you kids." For the first time since the champagne, I believed we might survive. The next morning he sold the jet. Not to spite Cassandra, not for optics, because without it the headlines had one less lens to borrow. He sold the car next. The penthouse would take longer. Money is quick when it's coming, it resists when it's leaving. "Are you sure?" I asked, watching signatures become decisions. "I'm keeping what I need," he said. "You. My sister's wrath is extra." I snorted. "Your sister would tax oxygen if she could." "She tried," he said. In a memo. We started measuring days differently, not by tickers but by small victories. Emma's laugh at lunch. A playlist that made the dishes go faster. A morning we overslept and no one fired us. He consulted for a startup that built cheap water filters for buildings that had never had them. I picked up shifts at the bookstore where Emma worked, recommending paperbacks like prescriptions. A headline attempted to shame us. "Billionaire takes bus." "You like that one?" He circled it in red and taped it to our fridge. At night, he read on my couch with his feet on my lap and the city in our window and said, "I thought love would feel like losing control." "It does," I said. "But it also feels like owning something I don't want to sell," he finished, and I kissed him for saying it. Nyla warned us, discovery is where rich people win by boredom. Boxes arrive. Then more boxes. Emails printed twice, redacted thrice, metadata gnawed to bone. Cassandra's lawyers wanted to bury us under paper and call it justice. We showed up with coffee and meaner patience. Opposing counsel requests all communications between Ms. Hale and Mr. Blackwell, a clerk droned. Nyla slid a drive across the table. Time-stamped, hashed, indexed. "Enjoy the parts where two adults discuss noodles." The senior partner smirked. "And all communications between Ms. Hale and any media outlets?" I answered before Nyla could. "None. I don't sell my story." "Everyone sells something," he said. "Not everyone discounts their soul," I replied, and Nyla kicked me under the table, gentle, proud. Then came Cassandra's surprise, a motion to compel production of my juvenile record. Shoplifting at 16. Mascara I couldn't afford, shame that kept price tags for years. Nyla rose. Irrelevant and prejudicial. The judge, a woman whose bun and gavel both looked like they could repair bridges, peered over the rim of her glasses. "Counselor Blackwell, explain to me how a teenage mistake informs a corporate dispute worth billions." Cassandra's lawyer lifted his chin. "Pattern of dishonesty." "Denied," the judge said, fast as a door. "Do not waste this court's time with character assassination dressed as relevance." Outside, I exhaled so hard my eyes watered. Damien pressed a palm to my back, low, steady. "You don't have to be perfect for us to win," he murmured. "You just have to be true." "And stubborn," I said. "And stubborn," he agreed. We walked past reporters who wanted a flinch, past a cameraman who asked me to give us a little anger, past the bronze lady holding scales that never get lighter. In the revolving door our reflections multiplied, then merged. For a second I saw us the way the city did, a scandal. Then I saw us the way we were, two people learning how to stand in a wind built to knock us over. That night, Nyla emailed a bomb with a bow. Attached, preliminary traces of irregular disbursements from Blackwell Foundation to a shell named Sable Verge LLC, authorized by Cassandra. A memo rode shotgun, mild as tea. We proceed quietly. Timing is leverage. "Quiet it is," Damien said, but his eyes burned like someone had finally opened a window in a locked room. "Smears are designed to arrive after dark." A blogger with a taste for venom posted an exclusive about me, grainy photos from high school, a blurry ex-boyfriend, a teacher quoted anonymously, ambitious, slippery, always reaching up. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to crawl into a pillow and not come out. Emma appeared at my door with a grocery bag and a hug that knocked breath into me. "We're cooking," she announced. "You chop. I stir." Damien sets the table. "I can set tables," Damien protested, obediently pulling plates from mismatched stacks. "And you, Mr. Millionaire turned competent," Emma said, "are on dish duty." We cooked like a spell against headlines. Garlic, tomatoes, basil torn with fingers. Music low. The apartment grew smaller in the good way, like a sweater you steal from someone you love. We ate on the floor. We were messy and happy and mortal. When Emma fell asleep on the couch and the city traded sirens for wind, I stood at the window and pressed my forehead to the glass. Damien came up behind me, his chin finding the hollow between my shoulder and my neck like it had paid rent. "I hate that they get to tell my story," I said. "Then write it," he replied. "Who'll read it?" "I will," he said simply. "And the 2 or 3 people who matter enough to make a life." I turned. "Do you regret it? Losing everything?" He considered. "I regret the years I didn't know what everything was." I kissed him for that answer. Outside, a couple argued on the corner and made up before the light changed. Inside, the future pressed its nose to the glass and asked to be let in. When Damien texted come up, I thought pizza. He meant the roof. Our building's roof wasn't a skyline bar. It was tar and gravel, potted basil, 2 folding chairs the super pretended not to miss. The city stretched in every direction, a map of decisions lit by sodium lamps. He'd strung cheap fairy lights between 2 vents. They made the wind look kind. "Why here?" I asked. "Because every story like ours has a rooftop," he said. "But this one's ours." He poured fizzy water into jelly jars like we were throwing a wedding for 2. "Cassandra wants a dramatic ledge," he went on. "We'll give her folding chairs and a plastic table and the kind of love that doesn't photograph well but survives the winter." "I own a hat," I said. "We'll be fine." We clinked jars. He took a breath like he was about to jump and said, "I put the penthouse on the market this morning." "I thought it already was." "Officially," he said. "I took my name off 3 charities that used it as perfume. I called the yacht broker." He laughed once, shaky. "I asked Kushi to change my email signature to just Damien." Wind picked up the fairy lights and made them sway like applause. I took his hand. "You're brave." "I'm late," he said. "But I'm here." We watched a plane slice the dark. A kid on a skateboard rattled down the block. Somewhere, a saxophone failed beautifully. He stood, tugged me up, and we danced without music. It looked ridiculous. It felt like a decision. He kissed me under lights we'd bought with tip money, the city's 1,000 eyes blinking elsewhere. No ledges. No cameras. Just the 2 of us, far from the places where power pretends to be love. There are sacrifices that look heroic in hindsight and idiotic in the moment. This one was both. Nyla called it dawn. "They're filing an emergency motion to freeze your personal assets, Damien. Cassandra claims you're dissipating to avoid judgment." "I am dissipating," he said calm. "On purpose. She'll try to rope in anything tied to you, including Lila's lease if we're sloppy," Nyla warned. "We need to preempt." "How?" I asked. "Distance," Nyla said. "Fast. Paper it clean." By noon, Damien had executed a legal unicorn, divestiture with prejudice. He put the proceeds from everything already sold into a trust he didn't control and earmarked it for the community center and scholarships with my sister's therapist's name on the fund. He signed away buyback options. He gave away the last lever. Cassandra's lawyers, expecting a man clinging to gold, found a man holding receipts from a donation office. "He's insane," one hissed in court. "Or inconveniently principled," the judge mused. Motion denied with a side of "you should be ashamed." Outside, I tugged Damien into a vestibule that smelled like wet umbrellas and gratitude. "You just made it impossible to go back," I said, half dizzy. "I wasn't planning to," he said, dizzy too but with relief. "Besides, now if anyone asks what I value, we can point at a building full of kids learning how to take apart a bicycle." "I thought you'd say you." He smiled. "That too. But bicycles look better in a press release." I laughed. Then I cried. Then we bought 2 donuts and ate them on the courthouse steps while a man played a harmonica nearby like the soundtrack had been hired last minute. Irreversible, it turned out, felt a lot like an anchor dropping in a good harbor. Cassandra expected markets to punish foolish love. For a while they obliged. Then the street did the one thing she hadn't priced. It got bored of its own outrage. A journalist with a memory longer than a news cycle ran a Sunday feature. The Quiet Pivot, Blackwell's Exit and the Rise of Boring CEOs. It wasn't romantic. It was arithmetic. Under Cassandra's stability, growth had stalled. Under Dana Lark, the operations chief promoted while Cassandra Ward, planes ran on time, employees stopped quitting and vendors got paid in 30 days. Turns out competence trends, Kushi texted me attaching a graph with the caption "the slope you love to see." Cassandra's campaign sputtered. The lawsuit lumbered. In a closing brief, Nyla threaded Cassandra's shell company, Sable Verge, the foundation grants and a series of consulting fees, to a PR shop that had specialized in whispering about me. The judge set a hearing in the tone, "If I smell fraud, I bite." On the way out, a cameraman asked me if I still considered myself lucky. "Yes," I said. "But not for the reasons you think." "What reasons then?" "I get to go home to someone who picks up both ends of a conversation in the laundry." The clip didn't go viral. It didn't need to. It was a quiet counter-programming against spectacle, non-TV friendly domestic content. Cassandra peddled fireworks. We offered oatmeal and a roof that didn't leak. That night, Damien made lentils that tasted like apology for all the restaurants we weren't going to. He kissed my wrist while the pot simmered and said, "I used to think luxury was the ability to leave a room and be missed. Now it's the ability to stay and not be chased." "Put it on a tote bag," I said. "I'll put it on our wall," he said, and did in pencil, like a vow that could be edited but wouldn't be. Cassandra's last gambit was personal. She asked for a private meeting in a church courtyard that smelled like thyme and old rain. "I didn't come to bargain," she said, sitting on a stone bench as if the saints owed her cushioning. "I came to explain." "Explain what?" I asked, wary. "Why people like us guard money like oxygen," she said. "Our father taught us the world is a ledger. Anything unaccounted becomes loss." "I grew up with a different ledger," I said. "Every hour had a tip amount next to it." "Same math," she said. "Different zeros." She looked tired then, human under the porcelain. "He built a machine and put Damien inside," she admitted. "And me in the control room. Love breaks machines. It works, but it breaks them." I swallowed. "Then let it." She almost smiled. "You think it's that simple?" "No," I said. "But I think it's necessary." We sat with the bell tower ticking above our heads, counting minutes that were not ours. When she stood, she didn't offer a hand and I didn't expect one. "For what it's worth," she said, pausing at the iron gate, "I wanted him to find something that wasn't an echo." "He did," I said. She left without looking back. I watched a sparrow bully a pigeon off a crumb and thought, not for the first time, that the city understands hierarchy better than any boardroom does. When I got home, Emma was at our table, shoes off, report cards spread, excited about a kid who'd read his first book cover to cover. Damien was repairing a wobbly chair with disproportionate joy. "How was church?" he asked. "Uncomfortable," I said. "Honest?" He nodded, like that was the only combination that ever mattered. Later, in bed, he pulled me close and said into my hair, "I keep waiting for the part where I miss the old power." "And?" "I miss the illusion sometimes," he admitted, "that I could fix any problem with a phone call. But then the phone rings and it's Emma and she's laughing and I think, I made the right trade." "You did," I said, not as comfort but as fact. The next morning, the judge scheduled the fraud hearing for the end of the month. Nyla's email subject line read, "Let's land this." Kushi sent a sticker of a cartoon gavel smashing a cartoon $sign. Dana Lark released a memo about safety investments. The stock bumped. The headlines flipped. "Under new leadership, BWH steadies." We poured coffee into jelly jars and stood at the window. The bakery opened below us. The cat in 3B surveyed its kingdom. Somewhere above the L, a sun the tabloids didn't own climbed up anyway. "Ready?" Damien asked. "For court," I said. "For everything after," he said. "Yes," I told him. "Yes. Courtrooms don't care about love, they care about ledgers." Nyla stacked ours like a fortress. Flowcharts, wire traces, sign-off stamps. Cassandra's team arrived with expensive indignation. "Ms. Blackwell," the judge said, "counsel will address the following: Sable Verge LLC, its relation to the Blackwell Foundation and payments labeled community engagement, routed to a PR firm that later ran negative campaigns about Ms. Hale." Nyla called Evan Torres, the accountant with the haunted look of someone who finally decided his spine mattered. He testified to the invoices, the consulting retainers, the backdated memos. "Who authorized the transfers?" Nyla asked. "Cassandra Blackwell," he said. "Her initials. Her password." Nyla unveiled the piece de resistance, an internal email from Cassandra to her PR fixer. "If the love story persists, intensify narrative, grifter, past sins, danger to shareholders." The timestamp coincided with the smear of my juvenile record attempt. Cassandra didn't flinch, her lawyer did. "Out of context." Nyla slid forward the full thread. Silence stretched. The judge tapped a nail on the bench, slow. "Ms. Blackwell, explain why charitable funds paid invoices for reputation management that targeted a private citizen dating your brother." Cassandra folded her hands. "Because reputations move markets. I acted in shareholders' interests." "Shareholders," the judge said mildly, don't include your pride. He took the matter under advisement and scheduled sanctions arguments. Outside, microphones sprouted. I said nothing. Damien said less. Nyla said, we'll talk when the order drops. On the steps, a woman in a flight attendant uniform passed us, hesitated, and squeezed my arm. Thank you, she whispered, then vanished into the crowd. It landed harder than any headline. That night, Damien didn't celebrate. He stood at the sink washing 2 plates, water running too long. She used charity money, he said softly. My father would've, he stopped, jaw locked. Would've what? I asked. Applauded the efficiency, he said, heartbreak dry. Taught us to call it stewardship. I turned off the faucet and rested my forehead between his shoulder blades. Break the chain. I am, he said, voice steadying. Even when it rattles at night. The tape arrived in a brown envelope with no return address, grainy as guilt. Damien at 22 tucks crooked, listening to his father at a gala. Remember, son, the old man's voice oozed, people are assets until they're liabilities. Love is the fastest depreciation. A note paper clipped to the disc, for court. For conscience. A friend. We watched it at the table, laptop light carving old shadows into Damien's face. He trained us to believe warmth was a crack, he said. We learned to seal it with money. You unlearned it, I said. Because you made a crack and didn't apologize, he replied, almost smiling. He slid the disc to Nyla with a text, use if necessary. That evening, Cassandra ambushed the press with a family statement, in front of the Blackwell building. She framed herself as the last adult in the room. A young reporter asked if Sable Verge ring-fenced any flights for her Amalfi vacation. The camera captured the half-second she took to choose the lie. Internet time slowed, truth sped up. At home, Emma arrived with warm bread and her boyfriend, Santiago, who fixed bikes and didn't flinch around men like Damien. We ate on the roof. The city was kind for once. For an hour, none of us were exhibits or op-eds. We were just people, laughing when Persephone the plant tried to die again. When the bread was gone and the sky had decided on blue-black, Damien said, my father would call this waste. What do you call it? I asked. Profit, he said. For a ledger with only our names. They sent the last offer at dawn, an NDA with an A-list attorney's signature, a trust for Emma, the number obscene enough to buy silence from a choir. I stared until the digits stopped being math and started being insult. Emma read over my shoulder, eyebrows up. That's a lot of therapy. That's a lot of leash, I said. Damien didn't touch the paper. We can refuse, he said, and still build the life we want. I folded the NDA in half, then in half again until it looked small and weak. I won't sell my story to Cassandra, I said. If it ever sells, it'll be because we wanted to tell it. Emma hooped. Santiago clapped. Damien watched me like I'd threaded a needle between 2 futures. Proud of you, he murmured. We dropped the envelope in the mailbox addressed to Nyla with a sticky note. Declined. With prejudice. The box swallowed it. Relief flooded in like weather changing. That night we splurged on 2 seats at the cheap opera. The soprano sang about a love that would outlive poverty. The tenor promised a roof that would never leak. We held hands and let someone else's tragedy tune our hope. On the way home, a man recognized Damien and spat at his shoes. You ruined my stock. I ruined my crown, Damien said unruffled. Your stock is doing fine. The man stared at me. He'll leave you when the story ends. Damien glanced at him, then at me. The story doesn't end, he said. It changes genres. We laughed. The man didn't. That was okay. Not every witness belongs in a love story. The sanctions order dropped like a bell. Misuse of charitable funds, adverse inference for spoliation, attorney's fees awarded to defendants, referral to the state AG for further review. In judge speak, it was a thunderclap. Cassandra's statement tried for dignity. It achieved weathered denial. Dana Lark released a clear-eyed memo to staff about governance reforms and a donation, quiet, unbranded, to a shelter Cassandra's PR shop had once used as backdrop. We met Nyla in a diner where the coffee tasted like honesty. You just won leverage for breakfast, she said, sliding a copy of the order across the formica. What now? I asked. Now we negotiate dismissal with prejudice, Nyla said. And you choose whether to countersue. I advise against. Not because you wouldn't win, because you've already won what matters. What's that? Damien asked. Your life back, she said simply. On the walk home, we stopped at the courthouse steps where weeks before we'd eaten donuts like medicine. Damien took my hands. Marry me. I blinked. That's not a negotiation point. It is to me, he said, smiling with the new freedom that lived where fear used to. No diamonds. No orchestra. Just the two of us saying yes. I'm in sneakers, I said. So am I, he replied. We'll call it thematic. Yes, I said, laughing and crying at once. Yes. We signed the license at City Hall with Emma as witness and Santiago as photographer and a clerk who loved love but hated slow pens. Outside, someone threw birdseed. It hit us like confetti from a thrift store. On the subway home, an old woman patted my knee. Keep choosing each other when the train's late, she advised. That's the trick. They caught us outside the bakery the next morning, microphones multiplying like mushrooms after rain. Lila, is it true you turned down 7 figures to stay noisy? Damien, do you regret donating your fortune? Cassandra says you're reckless romantics, comment. Sure, I said, voice steady. Reckless enough to believe people are not depreciation. Romantic enough to build a life without a budget line for cruelty. Damien squeezed my hand. And if you need a headline, he added, try this. Man chooses wife over wealth, sleeps better. A few reporters laughed. One didn't. Are you happy, Mr. Blackwell? Really? He looked at me like the city wasn't watching. I'm married to the person who doesn't let me lie to myself, he said. So yes. The clip played on a morning show between weather and sports. The hosts smiled into their mugs and said words like refreshing and finally. Cassandra's PR shop tried to counter, but the algorithm had moved on, to puppies on skateboards and a senator's bad karaoke. That afternoon, Dana texted Damien a photo of a plane on a runway with the caption on time. Again. He sent back proud of you and meant it. We bought a second-hand ice machine from a closed bar, hauled it up 3 flights with Emma cackling and the cat supervising, and installed it crooked. The first cube dropped like a tiny victory. We wrote vows on index cards and kept them on the fridge. Not flowery. Specific. We will tell the truth when it's cheapest to lie. We will choose the small kindness over the big performance. We will never say you always or you never during an argument about dishes. We will let the past inform us but not run the show. We will budget for joy. Damien started teaching a Saturday class at the community center. Money Without Cruelty 101, how to read a lease, how to open a checking account, how to tell a scam to go to hell. I shelved books and slipped paperbacks into palms with a whisper. You're going to love this one. Emma ran a bike club. Santiago fixed a chair that had squeaked through 3 chapters of our life. One evening the sky turned copper. We climbed the roof with a blanket and 2 cups of tea. The fairy lights shivered. The city hummed, not asking for our names. Do you miss the world at your feet? I asked. No, he said, honest and quick. I like it at my side. He nudged me with his shoulder. And sometimes on my lap. I swatted him. He grinned. Below us, someone played a piano badly and with enthusiasm. Above us, a plane scribbled a line toward elsewhere. Between we were exactly here. He rested his head against mine. I lost everything the moment I fell in love with you, he said, not sad. And? I prompted, smiling. And it turns out everything was a rounding error, he replied. This is the sum. We sat until the tea cooled and the stars shrugged their way through the light. When we went downstairs, the ice machine dropped another cube like applause. Cassandra didn't crumble, she eroded. The Attorney General opened an inquiry. Donors called for audits with very polite signatures. A director resigned to spend time with family, which is how men say I'm allergic to subpoenas. Dana Lark kept flying planes and paying invoices on time. The stock found its sea level and stopped pretending outrage could replace maintenance. We passed Cassandra on the courthouse steps after a status conference. She looked smaller without the halo of cameras, her white suit gray at the cuffs. You won, she said, tired rather than venomous. We chose out, Damien answered. The rest did its own math. Her gaze flicked to me then back. He was always going to love something more than the company, she said. I just never thought it would be a person. People are annoyingly resilient, I said, not unkind. She studied us the way a cartographer regards a coastline that refuses to stay still. He's different, she admitted quietly. You are too. So are you, Damien said. Cassandra almost smiled. Don't be generous. It confuses me. We let her go. Some victories don't need a trumpet. They need a door that opens both ways. That night I wrote, Queens don't lose crowns. Sometimes they put them down when they realize they're heavy. I left the page on the fridge. In the morning, Damien added in pencil, Some kings learn to bake bread. Chapter 22, The Olive Branch. A week later, an envelope slid under our door with the haughty humility only old money can achieve. Inside, a letter on thick stationery, no seal, just a signature, Cassandra, and 2 sentences. The foundation will funnel the remainder of Sable Verge funds to the shelter we exploited. You can hold us to it. See. Emma hooped. Accountability with stationery. Nyla confirmed the wire the same afternoon. It's not absolution, she said. It's a receipt. We brought lemon bars to the shelter on a Saturday. No press. Just kids coloring, a volunteer handbook that still said facts, and a cork board full of flyers for legal aid and free flu shots. A woman with a braid down her back recognized Damien and said, "Can you read to our 4 o'clock?" He did, 2 stories about stubborn turtles and an alphabet book where L stood for lion and love and learn. On the walk home he was quiet. "She did the right thing," he said of Cassandra. "Under a spotlight," I said. "Sometimes that's the only place people believe you," he replied. We stopped on the bridge and watched a barge push water out of its way with the confidence of something built for a purpose. I slid my hand into his pocket and found the index card vows we'd written. He'd added a new line in tiny script. "We will celebrate small repairs like miracles." "Approved," I said. "You wanted to start a fund. I wanted to start a place." "A fund can move fast," he argued. "Write checks. Scale impact. A place can move slow," I countered. "Hold people. Scale trust." We compromised by doing both very badly for 2 weeks, then very well for 1. We rented a narrow storefront with a skylight and a floor that had survived 3 lifetimes of shoes. We painted the walls the color of an honest morning. We called it Ledger and Loaf, half workshop, half bakery, where you could learn how to read a contract while eating the kind of bread that makes you forgive your enemies for at least 5 minutes. Saturday mornings, lease literacy with Nyla, she charged us nothing, charged landlords everything. Tuesday evenings, budget night with Damien, teenagers only, snacks enforced. Daily, sourdough, rosemary focaccia, and Emma cinnamon knots that caused minor riots at 8 a.m. Santiago installed wall hooks for coats and dignity. On opening day the line doubled back to the bodega. A pilot from the airline brought flowers. Kushi delivered a stack of flyers she designed that didn't look like flyers. Dana sent a handwritten card, "Proud of you both." Airplane cookies on us for a month. Persephone the plant tried to die again and failed. A man in an old suit hovered near the window, reading the sign 3 times before coming in. "Can you look at this?" he asked, unfolding a letter about an eviction. Damien sat him at a table, poured coffee, and began with, "Here's how they scare you and here's how we make them stop." The oven dinged. The city exhaled. We were open. She ran a mile. It was ugly and glorious and half uphill because New York never learned about kindness, but Emma did it. Fists pumping, hair escaping its tie, Santiago biking alongside yelling, "You're a comet," at an unacceptable volume. She collapsed on a bench, laughing and crying. "I remember when I thought stairs were Everest," she gasped. "Look at me, Lila. I'm a mountain goat." I looked. I saw the girl who once gripped my hand in a waiting room and whispered, "Don't let me disappear." I saw the woman who led story time at Ledger and Loaf on Wednesdays and had a fan club of toddlers who could pronounce hyperbole. Damien jogged up behind, red-cheeked, triumphant. "She lapped me twice," he panted. "Because you stopped for a pretzel," Emma said. "It was research," he protested. "For bread." We went home and made pancakes for dinner because rules are a suggestion. I caught myself staring at them, Emma with syrup on her chin, Damien with batter on his sleeve, and felt the kind of wealth that makes accountants useless. That night, Emma taped her race bib to our fridge next to the vows. She grabbed a pen and added a new line. "We will celebrate bodies for what they do, not how they look." "Approved," we said in chorus. The AG issued a finding, fines, reforms, and a sentence that landed harder than any number: admission. Blackwell Holdings acknowledged inappropriate use of charitable funds during a period of internal transition. Cassandra stepped down from the foundation and stepped up to volunteer hours that weren't performative because no one was watching. She sent no letter this time. She sent cupcakes. They were dry but sincere. "History won't remember this footnote," Nyla said, tapping the report. "I will," I said. Ledger and Loaf added a new class, How to Apologize and Mean It, co-taught by me and a rotating cast of neighborhood aunts. Lesson 1, Say the harm. Lesson 2, Don't say, but. Lesson 3, Bring soup. Sometimes between classes and Brett I wrote. Not for magazines. For my future forgetful self. I wrote about the spill, the server room, the first night on our roof, the morning we signed pencil vows. I wrote about fear and why we keep mistaking it for safety. I wrote about love not as a firework but as a light switch you decide to keep on. Damien read every page like it was a profit and loss that finally made sense. Publish? He asked once. Maybe, I said. When it's done. Do stories finish? He asked. Only when people do, I said. And I'm busy. We married proper on a Tuesday afternoon in the back room at Ledger and Loaf, between the proofing baskets and the financial literacy posters. The guest list fit on an index card. Emma wore blue sneakers and cried before I did. Santiago forgot the rings and produced 2 bakery twist ties that made everyone laugh so hard it counted as an organ workout. The judge from our case sent a plant with a note. Remember, arguments, then evidence, then apology. In marriages, skip to the apology. When it came time to say words, we didn't improvise. We read the fridge. I will tell the truth when it's cheapest to lie, I said. I will choose the small kindness over the big performance, he said. I will never say you always or you never, during an argument about dishes, I said, side-eyeing the sink. I will let the past inform me but not run the show, he said, glancing at the ghost who'd taught him otherwise. And we will budget for joy, we said together, and the room hummed like a kitchen at 8 a.m. We kissed to applause, to yeast rising, to a city outside that did not care and therefore earned the right to keep us. That evening, Cassandra stood in our doorway holding a lopsided bouquet. She looked unsure. I took it. Come in, I said. I can't stay, she replied. She exhaled. You look happy. We are, Damien said. You can be too. Working on it, she said, and for the first time I believed her. Years later, a kid at the community center asked Damien if he ever missed being important. He thought for a long time, then said, I never stopped. Ledger and Loaf had expanded into the space next door. The Saturday classes were standing room only. Emma and Santiago got married under the fairy lights on our roof. The cat in 3B objected vocally and then fell asleep on the rings. Cassandra taught a monthly workshop called Grace for Accountants and brought cupcakes that had improved year over year. Sometimes tourists wandered in, squinted at our chalkboard sign, warm bread, colder contracts, and asked if we were that couple. We'd shrug. Only on Tuesdays. I still wrote. Not for the internet. For us. For the days we forgot how we got here and needed a breadcrumb trail back to ourselves. On a winter night edged with blue, I locked up the shop and found Damien sitting at the counter, flower on his forearm, a stack of index cards under his hand. What's the new line? I asked. He held up the card. We will never confuse wealth with worth. Approved, I said and kissed the flower off his skin. Outside, the city ran its neon prayers. Inside, we washed bowls and proofed dough for morning and turned off every light but the one over our vows. He had once had the world at his feet. He lost it all the moment he fell in love with me. And all these years later, we still had everything that counted, stacked in cooling racks, scribbled in pencil, warm in our hands, exactly where we could reach it.